every social service that we rely on is based on our ability to access it is based on how many people in our community show up for the census. If you live in a community of 100 families, and according to the census formulas, because all the census is it's just a count. It just counts how many people there are, where they live, and what their needs are. And based on that information, those numbers, that data is fed into all of these federal formulas that determine how much each community gets for WIC, for SNAP, for police officers, for transportation, affordable housing, senior citizen centers, hospitals, schools. So everything that we rely on to make our society run is funded based on census math. If you live in a community of 100 families, and according to the census math for that census, every community of 100 families should get 10 educators, right? 10 teachers. If only 50% of your community fills out the census, if only half of you fill out the census, you're only going to get 5 teachers. But those 5 teachers have to teach all 100 families worth of children, right? So you undercut your education capacity by half because only half of you fill out the census. The same is true for police officers. Officers cost money. If you are a new officer, if you're a bad officer, you're cheaper than a good seasoned officer. Actually, Eljoy and I and June talked about this a lot on Sunday Civics a few months ago. The worse the officer is, the newer the officer is, the less they cost. If you live in a community where only 50% of you fill out the census, your budget for effective policing is 50% of what it should be. So you can only afford the cheapest, worst, newest, greenest officers in your community. Everything that we do essentially is based on these very non-sexy, boring math principles that make our eyes glaze over. But at the end of the day, not participating in the census is typically at the heart of most of the social issues that we're facing.
It's actuarial, and we participate in our own demise. They're not targeting us as poor communities. We've made ourselves poor by not participating and showing up.
That's right.
So it's not even a catch-22.
No, not at all.
It's fixable.
Very much so. Because in 2020, next year, for the first time, there's going to be so many changes with the census that should, ideally, if we weren't dealing with 45, make our participation as a Black community that much easier. Number one, it's going to be digital. So you'll be able to go online. Starting in March, they're going to start sending out postcards that's going to have an identification number on it. You can literally go online. It's 10 questions, 10 minutes, bing, bang, boom, you're done. And you need to ensure that we are counting everybody. So if you got somebody who's locked away, but you've putting commissary in money in their commissary, you putting money in their books to keep them while they're incarcerated.
That's another person.
That's another person in your household. We often don't count children in the Black community, and a lot of us have children in our families who maybe got there by mysterious means, right? We may be taking care of other people's children. We do that a lot. Fictive parenting and fictive kinship relationships that allow us to really support the communities that we have. You need to count every single child because Black children under the age of 5 are the least counted on the census. Now, let's think about this. Let's say our listeners have a 5-year-old in their house right now, someone that they love dearly. Beautiful little Black child with just the most amazing melanated cheeks. You just want to kiss them and hug them all day. From the time that child is 5 until 10 years from now, when they're 15, think about the differences in their medical care. Think about the differences in their dental care, the differences in their education. Think about the roads they're going to have to travel on to get to their elementary school, middle school, high school. Think about the condition of the buses and how they're going to get there, the bridges they have to drive over. Think about the access to water and food supplies that they're going to need, the health care and the housing that they're going to need. From 5 to 15, your body is changing. There are a lot of changes. And at 5 years old, if your parents do not fill out the census, they are essentially locking you into being underfunded for the next 10 years of your life. If you're a senior citizen, many of us have grandma and grandpa, big mama, big papa living with us at home, and they're 60 years old next year, or they're 70 years old next year. Think about how many changes they're going to go through from 60 to 70 because your census data is locked in for 10 years. If at 60 years old, they're not counted on the census, at 70, they're not going to have gotten access to the geriatric medical care that they need. They're not going to have access to the senior citizen centers that they need. If you live in an urban city and you have programs like Access-a-Ride or busing services for seniors, they're not going to have it. If you have public transportation, your buses won't have the ability to raise and lower to accommodate seniors' bodies. When you're talking about a community that is as dependent on social services as our community is, we are the ones who most cannot afford to show up in an undercount in a census. However, we typically do because we're afraid of demand. And we think demand is going to get up in our business when we fill out the census. And what I tell people is, demand is in your business. Demand don't want you filling out the census. Why? Because every time we increase our rate of census participation, we take pie away from the man. So when you go to these white communities, like if you're in New York City, you go to a white community, they got trash cans on all four corners of every intersection. You go to my community, Bed-Stuy, you might walk 5 blocks before you find a trash can. So even if I want to be socially conscious and keep my community clean, I don't have the physical mechanisms I don't have a trash can to throw this soda can bottle and this wrapper from my burger away, even if I wanted to help my community stay clean. Now, if I go to a white community, any opportunity I need to discard something, there's trash cans waiting for me. Why? Those communities show up 100% on the census. And your ability to get trash cans, your ability to get trash services, recycling bins, compost bins, all of those things are tied to how much of your community shows up.
So it's not a conspiracy to keep the hood dirty.
No, it's not. The hood doesn't know how keeping hoods clean are funded. And because we don't know that, we don't participate in that. Now, but you know who does in our communities when we're getting gentrified? The gentrifiers. So when you have a bunch of 20-somethings who move into your neighborhood and they're excited to be there because, oh my God, I just came from Wisconsin. I am so excited to be in this city. I have totally wanted to move here my entire life. And I have no children. My seniors are back in Wisconsin. They don't care, like they don't need anything from New York. I'm totally good. So when I fill out the census at 20, I am going to show that I am a 20-something who lives in an apartment with other 20-somethings. We don't have childcare issues. We don't have medical issues because we're under 26. So we're covered by our parents' insurance. Oh my God, let's fill out the census. We do it all the time. This is so great. So what's going to show up in your community on the census block? You're going to have cafes. You're going to have dog parks. You're not going to have schools because the people who filled out the census in your community didn't need them. You're not going to have senior citizen centers because the people who live in your community who fill out the census, the gentrifiers, don't need them. But they do need dog parks. They need cafes with outdoor seating. And so that's what you're going to see. And then it becomes this grand big conspiracy. The man C-O-conspiracy. Nah, fool. The man just tricked you into not filling out the funding mechanisms. And so there it is.
And she did that in like 3 minutes.